My Hero Academia, Chapter 219. Go! Slide and go! So another great chapter coming from Horikoshi this week. A lot more fun than last week's chapter, but I'm not really holding anything against that one, of course. It was the beginning of the arc, expository type of chapter that was much needed. But with that being said, we can get into more action and fun stuff in this chapter since we just got over that big meal of exposition regarding the Liberation Army as well as the landscape of this upcoming arc. I'm also liking the pacing so far. I mean, I know we're only 2 chapters in, but it feels like this might be one of the longer arcs of My Hero, possibly even longer than the Chisaki arc, because, you know, we're this far in and we still don't even know the names of any of the villains yet, so that's pretty interesting. But this doesn't mean that it's going to be bloated or anything, or like padded and fluffed out like a lot of the other shonen arcs. Horikoshi gives us clean arcs, like little to no fat on them, and this is one of the things I really like most about My Hero and Horikoshi in general. So this chapter starts off with Bakugo and Todoroki taking on the Nameless Gang, led by the Shinso-looking dude with the carbonated water quirk. And this was kind of implied last chapter when we saw the spritzy type of water behind them at the end of that chapter. And after it washed away, you saw one of the civilians like, what is this, seltzer? So yeah, now we're further getting confirmation in this chapter. Yeah, this guy has a carbonated water quirk. Although I'm not really too sure exactly how it works. Based on the volume of it, I'm assuming that he has control over his quirk similar to how Todoroki does. Meaning that, like, he can't just manipulate water the way that Manual does. He can, like, straight up just create it and manipulate it at will also. He also has 2 gauntlets which resemble Bakugo's and also have the same kind of functionality to them as well, because we know Bakugo stores his nitroglycerin into his gauntlets to give him specialized attacks. Well, it appears that this guy's doing the same thing, but we can assume that he's storing his carbonated water into the chambers of the gauntlet, which gives him like a machine gun type of attack. I mean, these streams are like super fast and super precise. I mean, so fast that they grazed Bakugo. And we know that this is fast because Bakugo is one of the faster, more agile students, as well as reaction time as well. So I think that's implying that these things are like no joke. And also, they straight up slice a freaking light pole in half. This is super powerful because in real life, super fast, precise water streams can cut through steel and stuff like that, but it takes them a while to do it. But this guy did it instantly, so this is a pretty powerful quirk and equipment combo here. But also, I think this is showing us one of the main elements of this arc, and that is equipment. Because we really haven't gotten into that too much on the villain side of things. Like, usually it's just like they're super powerful with their quirks, or there's some kind of other element that goes into it. Like in the Chisaki arc, we saw that they had the quirk enhancement drug. Like when they take it, they become way more powerful than they originally were. You know, we saw it best on display when Kirishima was going against that swords dude, and he just became like insane, like moonfish style swords just all out of his body at once. And I'm thinking we're going to get a very similar dynamic in this arc, but instead of the quirk enhancing drug, it's just going to be Detnerat's equipment. Because we saw that it already took this guy's seltzer quirk, which was, you know, it was pretty good at first, but it turned it into like a super lethal one. So powerful, in fact, that the guy couldn't even control it. Like, it just threw him on his back. He's like, oh, too strong. Which was kind of similar to what we saw in the Chisaki arc also. And this is just the beginning, too. It's just similar to how that instance was. So I think it's only going to escalate from this point forward. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if the heads of the Liberation Army, the supposed children or grandchildren of Destro, all have like super powerful equipment to themselves as well. Like, it might not be so much about their quirk that makes them super powerful, but more their equipment that probably amplifies their quirk. And like I said before, I think this brings a new interesting element to the story because we really haven't seen villains get too much into equipment and stuff like that. Usually they've just been relying on their crazy overpowered quirks or whatever kind of henchmen they have. So the Liberation Army having some kind of crazy equipment, which they totally have. I mean, we don't know, of course, what it is yet, but they are the Detnerat company. They specialize in this stuff, and they mentioned last chapter that they're getting into hero support. And we've already seen the smallest example of their power in this chapter. So I fully expect that at the minimum, okay, the children or the grandchildren of Destro will have some insane equipment to them. I mean, maybe not all of them, but definitely like the main Joker-looking dude. But aside from that, it's also nice to see All Might go back into hero mode in this chapter when he tries to save that idiotic lady from the light pole. Like, I could totally see this happening in real life. Like, if we had heroes and villains in our reality and they got into like a scuffle on the street, I could totally see somebody like this lady going up to it and recording it on her phone and wind up almost getting killed or getting killed as a result of like collateral damage. But you know, it shows that like All Might, while he is pretty much powerless at this point, he still inherently is like the hero of heroes. And he's pretty much showing what we saw in the first episode here, where his body is like moving without him thinking, or however that went. I'm paraphrasing it here, but he's like, "Miss, get out of the way," and he just goes to save her. And he knows that all he could do is just move her out of the way, but still he's going to do it anyway because he is All Might. It doesn't matter if he's ultra powerful or ultra weak, he's still going to be that dude. But we're also seeing a super move from Todoroki in this chapter, which is pretty sweet. The last time we specifically saw this one was at the sports festival when he took on Izuku, and this is noted by Bakugo in this chapter. But we're also getting a name on it, which is the Great Freezing Heat Wave. And this is pretty much the result of the drastic change. We're also seeing a super move from Todoroki, which is pretty sweet. And the last time we specifically saw this one was at the sports festival when he took on Izuku, which is noted by Bakugo in this chapter. And we're actually getting a name on it this time. It's called the Great Freezing Heat Wave. And this is pretty much the result of the air temperature drastically changing and causing like a huge combustion, because we saw that Todoroki was originally using his ice against the unnamed gang, but then he changed to his fire side and it just caused this huge explosion, which like KO'd this dude. He even said that he was holding back on it. So this is pretty cool that Todoroki can just do this now. This adds a completely new element to his arsenal because it's not just fire or ice, it's a combination of the both, creating like an explosion type of attack, which he didn't really have access to before. And it's just showing us like the crazy potential of Todoroki, but it's also showing us that he is getting better and he's moving closer to his goal of being able to simultaneously use, you know, his fire and ice sides, because we saw like a glimpse of this in the provisional license arc when he was taking on Gang Orca, but this is just further showing us that like he is taking it to the next level, he's getting better with it, and now he can just produce like crazy explosion type of attacks. And I think this attack is just the beginning for Todoroki in this arc. I mean, I think they're showing us him and Bakugo in these first two chapters to establish that they are going to be major players in this arc. Like, they do have their provisional license now, so they can go and fight against the villains similar to how the students did in the Chisaki arc. I keep drawing parallels to that because this reminds me so much of it. But I do think that they're going to have a similar dynamic that like Kirishima, Ochako, and Tsuyu, and of course Izuku did in that arc. We're also introduced to the hero Slide and Go, who oddly enough has his name in the title for some reason. I mean, he's not really predominant in this chapter. We only see a few panels of him, but still he has the title. Interesting. But I'm not really sure what to make of this guy. Like, on the surface, he's, you know, the happy-go-lucky, over-touchy type of person, but I don't know, just something about him rubs me the wrong way. I'm not really sure what's going on, because he kind of comes out of nowhere, and I don't remember anyone ever calling for help, but I suppose it's a possibility that he's just patrolling this area of the city, or maybe a civilian called for help or something, I don't know. But still, he comes out of nowhere, and also he immediately knows that the gauntlets were poor quality goods from the black market. So, of course, maybe he's been tracking these dudes, or maybe the poor black market quality equipment has been around and he's seen it before because he's been patrolling these streets, or maybe he's run into similar villains who have had some stuff like that. But the fact that on the next page we find out that he was correct and they are leaked black market items by the Detnerak company that also have a contingency on them to explode if there's any sign of danger. So this could mean two things. Like I said before, it could mean that this guy is just familiar with this stuff, or it could mean that he is a double agent and he is working for the Liberation Army or just the Detnerak company, and that he's covering up the whole self-destructing aspect of it to throw them off of any ulterior motives. But also we're finding out that this equipment has some kind of 24-hour surveillance built into it, and it collects combat data. So it's very possible that they are witnessing or will eventually witness what happened in the scuffle in this chapter. So they're going to see like Bakugo, Todoroki, they're probably going to see All Might as well. So I'm sure that will entice them somehow and add like a further aspect to this arc, which also will give good reason for Todoroki and Bakugo to be so prevalent in it, since this could be like the igniting factor. Like now the Detnerat Company or the Liberation Army is aware of their existence. And speaking of the Liberation Army, I was correct in assuming that they got a hold of Gihren, because in the previous chapter they said they had found someone who was in contact with the League of Villains, and turns out to be none other than Gihren. I really like Gihren as a character. I think he's one of the better, more interesting ones, and probably more grounded than most also. He's just really cool. He has like an interesting dynamic to him, as to where he's not like full-blown League of Villains, but he appears to be loyal to them after this chapter, because he's not telling the Liberation Army anything. Like, it's awesome, because he's pretty much could be killed at any moment, and he certainly knows that, but he's just not giving up anything. And this whole sequence just raised Gihren's stock even higher than it was for me originally, because it just showed how much of a savage he is in this chapter, because we've never seen him put into like a situation like this before. It's just so cool how this played out. But I also have faith. I don't think that the president is going to kill him, or at least I don't think he is, because in the final panel that we see of him, he says, "It looks like this will be the start of a fruitful business partnership." So I assume that he's just going to like keep him on a leash, maybe have him hold up there the whole time, and just slowly getting information out of him some way. So now let's get to the beefy moment of this chapter, because on the last page, we're seeing a flashback of Gigantomachia wrecking the League of Villains. So what I think is happening here is this is happening after Kurogiri had been taken by Gran Torino and Tsukauchi's team. Because we saw that originally Kurogiri had gone to Gigantomachia to try to re-recruit him to join the League. That's simply because of the information that he was relayed by All For One. Because All For One was like, hey, you know, I'm not always going to be here. I'm probably going to get taken out by All Might. But if that does happen, you're going to have to be the sole protector of Tomura. And if you ever feel like you're on the edge when you're doing that, just go find my boy Gigantomachia and he will back you up. So we saw that Kurogiri went out to go get Gigantomachia, but he was intercepted by Gran Torino and Tsukauchi's team and was subsequently arrested by them. And we haven't seen Kurogiri since then. So I'm assuming that after Kurogiri was arrested, the League, you know, specifically Tomura, was like, yo, where's my boy Kurogiri? Haven't heard from him. So they went out themselves to go check on what happened with Gigantomachia, but it turns out Kurogiri wasn't there, and I guess they still didn't know at this point in time what had happened, so maybe they attacked Gigantomachia thinking that he took out Kurogiri or something, or maybe he attacked them. But nonetheless, we have to remember that Gran Torino and Tsukauchi's team returned to where Gigantomachia was, and they said that he wasn't there, or they had gotten there too late or something. So I'm assuming that this is kind of like a red herring here. Like, I don't think Gigantomachia is like going to kill the League or anything like that. I think he just roughed them up a little bit, and then likely in the next chapter or the following chapters, we're going to see them kind of reconcile with him and maybe re-recruit him, because we know that he is not in this location anymore, what we are seeing in this flashback from a month ago. So I assume he went back with the villains, and now he's like on their team possibly, or maybe begrudgingly on their team. But he certainly brings another awesome element to this arc, because we know the League is being targeted by the Liberation Army, and they are down Kurogiri. I assume they're going to be down Kurogiri for a while, because I'm guessing that he is in Tartarus with All For One and Stained now at this point, just taking a guess, or maybe they haven't put him in there yet because they still need to question him, but this has been about a month, so I assume Kurogiri is like locked up for good, so they definitely need the backup of Gigantomachia in this arc if they're going to be able to take on the heroes and the Liberation Army. I just really can't wait to see what happens with this. So that's pretty much it for the video today, guys. Let me know what you thought about this chapter in the comments. What do you think is going to happen with the Detnerak Company? Do you think they're going to get in the good graces of the heroes and then slowly reveal themselves to be dirtbags? Also, what do you think is happening with Gigantomachia? Has he been successfully recruited by the League? Let me know what you think. Also, if you liked the video, please give it a like. I also have a Patreon. It starts at $1. It gives you access to my Discord server. There's also a Q&A on there. And if you haven't already, please subscribe as well. Have a great day, guys, and I'll see you in the next one.